Hello! In this tutorial I'll teach you how to create a page with a calendar with a Gantt chart. Something like this Gantt chart that we see in this page. So first of all, let's log in our framework, choose one of the workspaces. Let's disable these tools so we can select our projects, and let's create a new page called calendar. So now that we have the page editor open, let's drag and drop the calendar widget into one of our templates regions. So the focus of this tutorial is to teach you how to configure this widget, the calendar widget, into a Gantt chart. So in order to do that, what I did was I create a text file here so it can help us how to understand the steps that we need to do. So first of all, what we need to do is to select this widget here and go to the advanced properties, the advanced settings of this widget, and we need to disable this property here, include JavaScript library. Why? Because Bloxtor comes with the full calendar.io library, but only with the free features. So the full calendar library is a library that allows us to create multiple different calendars. But if you want to have calendars like Gantt charts, you need to have the premium features of the full calendar, and you need to pay the license for that. So Bloxtor only comes with the free features. So if you want to have this example here with the Gantt chart, in that case we need to disable the library that comes by default with our framework, and what you need to do is to add the CDN library or pay a specific license and host it on premises. So let's go to our text file, let's copy the CDN URL, and let's go to the main settings of the page, and let's add a new JavaScript file, which will be the URL that we just copied. And voila, here it is, the URL. So now what we want to do is to select again our widgets, the calendar widgets, and in here what we want to do is to go to the footer toolbar, and what we want to do is to set the views with the timeline and the time grid views of the full calendar.io. So let's go here and let's copy these 4 views for the left side of the footer toolbar, and let's copy these 2 views for the right bar. Okay, next we need to set the initial view to the resource timeline. That we do this in the advanced settings here, initial view. Okay, so let's just save and see what we currently have now. Okay, so as you can see, we have a calendar with currently as the time line view. We don't have any resources yet created, we need to create them, and we have these views that we put in. So we put 2 views, the grid views in the right side and the 4 timelines views in the left side. After we have the resources, I'll show all of these better. So let's go back to our editor, and the next step that we want to do is to create a resource or to create, in this case, to create an action which basically it will return a list with the corresponding resources every time that calendar loads. So what we want to do is to go here to the resources, and let's add a new resource here, which will be a list result from array. Let's call this calendar resources, and in here what we want to do is to add we can add like 2 resources, where each resource is gonna have this structure here. So an ID, we're gonna have a title, we're gonna have a color, this is optional, we're gonna have an attribute saying allow events, and in case we want to have other sub-levels, we can add the children attribute too. And then we can add here some values. So in here could be the resource 1, an ID, Here I could put some name of a person. In here I can put like a color, it could be red. It will allow events. I can make it true. The children will be another array with other elements inside. Here in here I'm gonna have the ID, I'm gonna have the title, I'm gonna have the color, same thing in here. Where in here I can have the resource 1.1, and here is resource 1.2. In here the title it could be task A, task B. This is just an example. In here I can have like an example, I can have this color pink, in here I can have orange, doesn't really matter. Okay, so in here is the second resource. I'll have an ID, a title, a color, and allow events, and I have other ones where I have children too. Where in here will be the resource 2, and here will be another name of the person. I can have here another color, purple, allow events true, or in this case it could be false, just so you can see the difference. Okay, in here you can have an ID, title, ID, title. Okay, in here will be the resource to 1, and here will be the resource to 2, where in here will gonna be the task A, B, C, and here will be D, task D. Okay, and we just want to load this resource when the resource will be equal to calendar resources. Okay, so this resource, it is created, hard-coded, so we could have done this directly in our database and then create our own logic to return this dynamically. So for the sake of this tutorial, just create this statically, the same thing that we did, so which was to create this simple list in here, and then let's call this list in here in the calendar. So we need to scroll up, go to the resources properties in here, and in here basically we need to select the calendar resource. Okay, and additionally we need to go to the calendar settings, and in the settings that it says calendar resources datasets, we need to add a new dataset which will be the calendar resource, where in here we need to set the primary key, which will be the ID, and in here will be the title, in here will be the children, in here will be allow events, and in here will be the color. If you want to have some predefined color, if you want, we can set the color directly here too. It's not the case, so let's just save and preview what we currently have. And voila, basically we already have our resources here. As you can see that we have the first resource with the children and the second resource with the corresponding children. So, and I have the different views. So let's just change some dimensions here so we can see the calendar in just one page. So let's put this 100s, let's save. Okay, now we can see this a little bit better. Okay, perfect. So currently we are in the timeline day view. If I go to the week, I can see that I have the resource and this changes. The month, the year, I have the time grids of the week, the time grid of the day, and basically in here then we're gonna prepare all the things so that we can create our event in here according with the correspondent resources. So how can we do that? Okay, so now becomes interesting. So now that we have all this part done, so what we did was this first section where basically we disable the default library that comes by default with our framework, and we add this CDN URL. We basically set these views in the left and right bars of the footer toolbar. We set the initial view and we create the static list the static array in our resources with this structure, and then we went to the calendar resources dataset and we put all these specific attributes in the settings of the resource, which was in here. That's what we did. Okay, so first part is done, and then obviously that we load in the calendar, we load this resource that we created hard-coded. Okay, so next part what we need to do is we want to every time that I make some interaction in my calendar, I want to create an event here. So how can I do that? Okay, so first of all, let's select again our widget calendar, so we can have the properties here, and let's go to the callbacks section. So the callback section, we need to select in the on select cell, we need to select add resource calendar event, and in the on resize we need to select the update resource calendar event, and in the move we need to select the update resource calendar event too. Okay, so basically these events here will trigger every time that we click in a cell, will trigger the add resource that is defined in here, and these two will trigger the update resource they are defined in here. So we need to define that resources. So first of all, let's go to the resource section, which is this section here that we already set the load resource, and in here we want to set add resource in here and update resource in here for the event. This will be specific for a table that we'll create in our database, but we didn't create yet that table. So first of all, let's create that table. So these three tables are the tables that appear by default in our demo. So what we want to do is to create here another table. Let's call it calendar event, something like that. And in here it comes by default with these attributes, and what we want to do now is to add an attribute to have the title of the event. We want to add another attribute to have the start date of the event, another attribute to have the end date of the event, and another attribute to have the resource ID. Okay, let's check if the types are correctly set. Here is correct, and in here, here it's a name. So name, we can put it short name. Okay, perfect. Okay, so now that we have our table created in here, don't forget that when we create here the IDs of the resources, we make this we put it R1, R2, R11. So this is a string, this is a varchar. That's why the resource ID needs to be a short name and cannot be an integer. Okay, so next step, what we want to do is to go here to the add resource, and well, first of all, what we want to do is to go to the load resource, and we want to load all the events from this database table that we created. So what we need to do is to add here in the load resource a new resource, go here to this edit button, and let's create a new resource based on that table that we created, which was the calendar event table, this table here. And what we want to do is to get multiple records list. Okay, so we just do updates. Automatically the system creates all the logic code necessary to get all the records from this table and show it in here as it already did. Okay, so first step is done. If you want to know what he really did, basically if you go here to the main settings of the resource, you can see that he creates one resource more to get that specific event. So now let's add two more resources, one to add new events. So let's click here again, let's create a new resource, but this time is to add a new record. Let's click add, so the system can create the correspondent record, the correspondent logic code to add a new event. It's done. Let's go to the update resource and let's do the same thing but this time for the update record. It is currently creating, and it's created. Okay, perfect. As we can see, we have here the insert resource that the system created automatically, and we have the update resource that the system created automatically too. Okay, so next step, what we need to do is to tell to the system what are the correspondent attributes so the calendar, so the widgets knows that, okay, the title is to show the title of the event, the start date is to show the starting date that the event should start, the end date attribute is to end the event, and the resource ID is to place that event in the specific resource that we created in here, so this resource here. So where can we do that? So if we scroll down, we have here settings for all data sets. So in here what we need to do is to add the primary key, so in this case is calendar event ID, the title will be the title, the start attribute will be start underscore date, the end date will be the end underscore date, and the resource, so we need to expand the advanced features, and the resource ID will be the resource underscore ID. Okay, so first part is done. So we need to disable this guy here, because now basically this will convert all the load resources that we created here, that we set it here. So in this case will be these two resources, it will convert in events resource. The thing is that only this resource, it's an event. This one is not a resource to get the events, it's a resource to get the calendar resources. So what we need to do, we needed to disable in here this option, and we need to add a new data set, where in here we're going to select the calendar events. Okay, so first part is done. What we want to do next, let's check in the text file. So I already had this, we put all of this, and I think it's everything. So let's save and let's see what currently we have. Okay, so after I preview the page, I still have exactly the same thing because I don't have any events, but as soon as I click in the center, it will ask me to put some title, where I put task ABC for JP, whatever the name that I want to give, and automatically the system creates this in the database. How do I know that? So if I go to the database here, if I click in these three dots, I have this option manage records. So if I click here and I press Control key at the same time, it will open, instead of opening here in the middle, it will open in here, this tab here, where I can see all the events that are getting created according with this structure that I set here. So as you can see, it's creating in the R11 in this resource, is setting this event that I put it. If I want to have in here another event, I can put some other task B. If I want to make it here another task C, whatever, and in here this will be a task G, whatever. So if I refresh now this thing, I can see that I already have my records in my table. If I refresh this, so of course that in here I can move the cannot be undefined. Okay, there is something that is missing. Okay, I can always move these events too, but before we forgot to do something here, which was, so in here is complaining about the primary key. So I suppose it should be here, calendar event ID. So if I save now, and if I refresh, I should see exactly the same event. So it's already loading from the database, and when I move, it's already moving correctly. So you can see that this is the task B. Task B, it's this one where we have the start date 11:30, but when I refresh, I see that it changed to 9:30. If I change this to 2 p.m., I can see that will change this for 2 p.m. Here it is. It is correct. Additionally, I can move to another place, so I can move the task B, instead of being R12 will be R11, as you can see here. I can move it up here if I want to, move to R1, but I cannot move, I can only move here to these two. I cannot move to this part, to a novella, because a novella doesn't allow any resources. I don't know if you remember, when we configure here the main settings, we set that the first resource, the João Pinto, the allow events, we put it to true, but the Annabella, this one here, we put it to false. So that means that it doesn't accept any events in here. But we can always set the events in this part here. And that's it. So basically this is just to show you how can you create a Gantt chart. You can resize if you want to. All of these, it works fine. So if I refresh the page, as you can see, it's getting correctly the events from the database. Then you have, this is the timeline day view. We have the timeline week view, where in this case we needed to go here so we can see the correspondent day. We have the timeline of the month. We have the year. In this case we needed to scroll to the middle. Okay, here it are the tasks. And then we have the time grids. This is for the week. We chose all, since this is very small here, it shows all the weeks, everything overlapping. Of course, that in that case you needed to expand the calendar. And then we have the time grid day, where you can see all the resources here and the corresponding tasks, where you can move to another place, you can move, you can resize them, so you can do all of this. So all of this, it is editable. If you want to click and open a pop-up to edit the details, we have the previous tutorials for the calendars. We show you already how to do that, so the steps are exactly the same. So basically it's just to show you how can you have a Gantt chart similar with this one. So these are using exactly the same library. So basically this is just to show you how can you have in a very fast way, how can you have a Gantt chart to manage your employees' tasks. And that's it. So thank you very much.